It usually happens during a lull in the conversation, at a family dinner or a wedding. That one inevitable question is fired across the table. So, when are you having kids? If you answer that you aren't, the mood shifts. The air in the room thickens with pity, confusion, or a strange defensive anger. Society has a specific label ready for this choice. They call it selfish. Most people live by a predetermined rhythm. There is a sequence of milestones, school, career, parenthood, that functions as the default life script. It's a path taken so often that many never think to look for an exit. But what if we looked at the decision to step off that path from a different angle? What if the choice to remain child-free isn't a rejection of responsibility, but a response to it? It may be that this choice isn't a biological malfunction. Instead, it might be the result of a mind looking at the current state of the world with a high level of clarity and reaching a difficult conclusion. When you start to pull back and look at the systems we live in, the decision to bring a new life into the mix becomes a complex calculation. A sensitive mind doesn't just see a family, it sees the machinery required to sustain it. The math of modern survival is grueling. To provide for a child today, you are essentially committing a soul to 60 years of labor just to keep up with the rising costs of existence. That commitment is made against a backdrop of shrinking purchasing power, global instability, and a climate that is becoming increasingly unpredictable. Processing these overlapping crises takes a massive amount of mental energy. For some, the weight of these systemic failures makes the idea of adding more complexity feel impossible. This is the burden of awareness. It is the psychological state of being unable to ignore the facts of our environment, even when uncomfortable. When you feel the weight of the world this deeply, your empathy for a hypothetical child begins to outweigh the biological urge to reproduce. You aren't avoiding a duty. You are making a choice to protect a soul from being forced into a chaotic, exhausting machine. In that light, staying child-free looks less like selfishness and more like a form of guardianship. This perspective often goes even deeper, moving from global concerns to the history written in your own DNA. In many families, psychological wounds are an inheritance. Trauma can flow downward through generations, as patterns of emotional unavailability or toxicity are repeated by parents who never had the tools to heal themselves. A cycle breaker is someone who recognizes these patterns and makes the heavy decision to sever the chain. They decide that the pain inherited will stop with them. Staying child-free can be an ethical stance. It's the result of taking the role of a parent so seriously that you refuse to risk passing on a legacy of pain. This brings us to the reality of your daily life. Society is built on a baseline of constant noise and the expectation that you must always be available to give more of yourself. But for those with a highly sensitive nervous system, that constant output is draining. Silence and solitude aren't luxuries. They are requirements for biological regulation. You have to engineer a different kind of life, one built around autonomy, restorative sleep, and financial freedom to choose how you spend energy. We are taught that adulthood is defined by how much of our own comfort we can sacrifice for the sake of the collective story. But choosing to protect your own internal peace is a valid form of self-preservation. You are refusing to burn yourself out to meet a standard you didn't set. When people call the child-free choice selfish, they are often really saying that they find it uncomfortable when someone else prioritizes their own well-being over social expectations. Not everyone possesses a driving maternal or paternal instinct. Human biology is varied, and the absence of that specific urge isn't a flaw that needs to be corrected. A life without children is not a prologue or a waiting room. It is a complete, fully realized story. You have the right to put down the script you are handed and write a different narrative, one that respects your limits and your values. In a world that often feels broken and loud, there is a quiet victory in knowing who you